My first guest this week is Claston Bernard. He is an entrepreneur, former candidate for Louisiana's 2nd Congressional District, two-time Olympian, and author of the book Outcast. I brought him on to talk about the state of the culture today, and particularly to get his opinion on Gwen Berry's reaction to the national anthem and the American flag at a recent meet. Claston, welcome to the show.
Charles, thank you for having me on, man. As always, a big fan. And look, brother, hey, love you, man. Love you.
Well, we talk a lot pretty often, and we talk about all types of things. But you were the first person I wanted to reach out to with the first item that I wanted to talk about. I'm sure you've heard of the anti-American hammer-throwing Olympic hopeful that we have, who was, in her words, blindsided or surprised by a song being played and was offended. So I reached out to the Olympian I knew. So you're a former Olympian, and you've represented your country with pride, and I wanted to get your take. So tell everybody what this woman did, and then tell us what you feel about her reaction.
When I traveled with my American training partners, or when we were in Paris, or where we were in Sydney, the Olympics, or Athens, Greece, people saw them as American. They had mad respect. It didn't matter what your racial makeup it was. First thing they saw was the American uniform, and it was like, hey, Yankees, Americans, it's a respect thing. And whether I was out there in the Olympics warming up, getting ready for my event, which was a decathlon, if the American national anthem was being played, I would stand at attention. It was just a matter of respect. Most of the world understands that America is the beacon of freedom. It is a beacon of hope, and respect is due. There's a video of Usain Bolt, and he had the world at his feet, and he was being interviewed. And during the interview, the American national anthem was being played, and he's draped in Jamaican flag. And he said, hold on, wait. Because that's what it means. It's brotherhood, it's friendship, it's unity. It's a moment where we should all come together. So when you step on the American podium, you're teleporting what you will do when you get on the greater stage, which is the world stage, which is over 5 billion people watching the Olympics. Is that what you want to show off America? Is that? No, it should not be. I like the fact that you got a different perspective. You did not answer my question, though, so I will tell. I wanted you to tell them what she did. So some people might be listening, and now they're 3 minutes in, they're like, what are they talking about? So the woman that they're doing this podium for the ceremony, and she's in third, right? Wasn't she in third? Yes, and she's ranked third in the world.
Yeah, so they were playing the national anthem, and she turned her back to the flag and kind of put her head down like she was embarrassed by hearing the song. A lot of people got offended, some didn't. But when she was interviewed later, she said, well, she was kind of blindsided by it. Like she didn't expect them to play it, which is odd because it's kind of what they do. But I have another point I want to ask you about, but I want to get to that. You alluded to about, you mentioned it, even when I went up against Brian and when I did this. But see, you talked about your perspective, but people need to understand you are an Olympian. You're not somebody who's just saying, well, I tried, didn't make the team. You're an Olympian, but you weren't representing America when you were in the Olympics, right?
No.
So like Bolt, he was a guy who represented his country, but still has a respect and a love for the anthem, which I'll get to. But here's the second piece. Whatever your views are on America, which we'll get to because that's the topic, you were the decathlete for Jamaica.
Yes. Which
means you wore the Jamaican colors, you represented Jamaica, and you were trying to win the gold for your country.
Yes.
Did you or anybody else on the Olympic team for Jamaica bristle at anthems or anything that showed patriotic reverence to Jamaica?
Hell no. Excuse my language. It did not happen. and go back where? Go back to where?
But they don't even realize they're doing it, Claston, but they're proving that America is unique. So people can be wronged anywhere else in the world, right? But only in America do you get mad and say, well, I'm not going to stand for the anthem. I'm going to burn the flag. But you don't think people feel slighted or felt wrong in other countries? But you don't see Germans doing that. You don't see the French doing that. You don't see Canadians or Jamaicans. So only American athletes are so bothered because America is so much worse than everywhere else in the world that they have to take this stance, while at the same time, 90% of the countries with a constitution have adapted ours.
I can't top that. We have to see things for what it is. Yes, you have a First Amendment right. But you know what? There's a thing that is called restraint, and restraint for passion is restraint for respect for your house. You know, you don't just, if you're setting an example that people should come into your country and do not respect it, irrespective of what your grievances are. If I'm going into someone's house, I should still respect it. Well, you're setting the stage to say, we don't care about America.
Or it's like the other way. It's like your friends and family, right? You know, it's like the guy who's like jokes with his little brother and pushes his little brother around. But when he goes out the house and somebody makes fun of his little brother, he beats the guy up. It's like, you don't talk about my little brother, even though he said the same thing about your brother that you say at home about your brother. But it's different. You don't get to say that. So it's kind of like that as well as you bring it up. You know, don't get on the national stage and say that. You can talk about your grievances wherever you want. So let's get to the way people react to it, because that's kind of the problem. It's kind of like Kaepernick kneeling or like the NBA. People had their issues with that, but I don't think it's the same, because Kaepernick and LeBron, as ill-informed as they may be, were not representing the country when they did that, right? No. So it's not like they were saying, okay, the country's going to send you over to do this. Are you going to go? And I mean, basically, you're acting like a North Korean or a Russian dissident, right? Who's like, whoa, I need asylum. I pretended that I wanted to play sports, but I just needed to get out of the country so I can openly say, save me because they're trying to kill me. It's asinine. So that's the one thing. But the other thing that's interesting to me is the so-called conservatives who lack context. That kind of bother me. So you get a lot of conservatives who are like, look at you fake conservatives who say you want freedom and you for free speech, but you try to tell this woman she can't turn her back to the flag and the national anthem. We have freedom. You can do whatever you want. One, I don't think people are really saying she's not free to do it. But the other problem is, yes, she has freedom, but everyone has freedom in that vein. So that means people are free to react the way they want. It's almost as if they're saying she has the right to piss on the flag, but you don't have the right to be mad at you. Who are you to be mad? Well, it sounds like I have a right too, for one. And then the other problem is they think free speech means there's no consequences and no lines. So that means free speech means you can just say anything you want, right? You can just walk up to random women and say, I want to rape you, and that's okay. Free speech. Nobody believes that. So what's the difference? You can't say anything you want to say.
Yep.
So I think that that's true in this sense, because I saw a lot of people saying you're a phony conservative or you're a phony. You don't really care about free speech because you don't want her to put the country down on the national stage.
You know, the law of logic is this. There are consequences to all actions, whether we want to believe it or not. And the reality is, when you want to make that absolute free speech, it's kind of like absolute, that what the left wants to do, whatever they want to implement, whatever means necessary, they will go and do that. They will use force, they will use ridicule, whatever they need to get the means to justify it in. No matter what the consequences are, there are consequences to your actions. You know, it's something I tweeted out, I think earlier this morning or last night, where we have criminals who go out there, take a chance, and they are hoping when they take a chance that society will deal with them favorable. But that's not reality. Sometimes the consequences are quite severe, much more severe than what it appears to be, because there's a law out there that we don't get to determine and dictate how it reacts or responds to our behavior. And someone else can respond. The fact is, Muhammad Ali paid the dear price when he said he was not going to Vietnam. He paid the price, and he did not go to Vietnam, you know, but she wants to go on the world stage and piss on American flag. First of all, as an athlete at that level, every time you go to the podium, you go there to get a medal and to hear a national anthem played on that level. There's no other way for you to be there. That's what the podium is there for. So don't say you were blindsided. Don't sit there and try to fake the funk. I know what you know, at least I suspect what she was doing. Right. You know, so for me, I don't buy into that stuff. The fact is, you did something that you think is going to bring you money because you're an activist, bring your popularity, bring your fame. She's a good athlete. Don't get that wrong. She's a very good athlete. From, you know, her stats are showing she's good. But the reality is, Hammer is not a very big event. It's like the decathlon, even though it's one of the greatest, you know, you're known as the greatest athlete in the world. It doesn't bring the money that the 100 or 200 or 400 or the jumps, the single events. It's just saying Hammer is is not even in that category. Hammer is something that, you get a hammer medal, you get a discus medal. And if you're a good spokesperson, you might be able to capitalize on that. So to me, there's some profit motives behind it. God, I might be wrong, but the fact is, when you get to that podium, you know why you're there.
Coming up, more with Claston Bernard, author of Outcast. You're listening to The Charles Love Show on AM 560, The Answer.
I just can't remember her name.
Now, more of The Charles Love Show on AM 560, The Answer, with your host, Charles Love.
Welcome back. I am continuing my conversation with Claston Bernard, former Louisiana's 2nd Congressional District candidate and author of Outcast. We were talking about Gwen Berry before and her disdain for the American flag and the national anthem. Here we move on to the NFL and their new The NFL is Gay campaign and the odd particulars of focusing on pride for one group as opposed to others. Sticking with sports, I saw another interesting little advertisement. It's the month of June, and it's the new official month where companies pretend that they're woke and that they're, all in for the LGBT community, whether they are or not. It's just what you do. It's just like a rubber stamp. And so I'm sure you've seen on Twitter, companies change their logo with gay flag colors and, blah, blah, blah. But one that was a little interesting was the NFL making their little advertising saying the NFL is so gay. Did you see that? And what did you think about the NFL proclaiming that it's gay?
I saw the headline and it's quite disturbing. It's disrespectful to men who hold the traditional family values to the highest esteem, to what their religious beliefs are. And they have no respect because they're pandering to a certain class and category. The fact of the matter is, and I think Jason Whitlock put it best, what does your private parts have to do with playing ball? What does it mean? It doesn't mean all the men on there have balls. What difference does it make? Other than you go out there, you make the play. Whatever you need to do, you go out there and you execute. If you're not executing, you will be benched. But the fact is they want to normalize something that we know, whether it's logically or whether we can go on all, we can say all that. That is not. And in fact, it should be treated as a private issue. Deal with it on that realm. I don't need to know what you like. Because there's something that are self-evident, whether they like it or not. It is self-evident. A man and a woman come together, and they're young enough, they will produce. Right. There's no ands, if or but about that. So why are you making the NFL about something that is not? It's about big, strong men coming together and slugging it out violently.
Right.
That's what it's about. It's not about anything else.
Right. And obviously these companies are pandering. Even people in the LGBT community say as such. But it goes to another thing too. It's the level of the pandering is so high, because I think about it, because I like to be fair and logical and give people their argument. But I can't really square that circle. So you got the Pride Month, so we're going to celebrate being gay as if that's something to celebrate, whatever. But even if you say it is, I think about all the other groups who celebrate other things. And when they talk about intersectionality and different groups that are oppressed and all this other stuff, whether you agree with it or not, we hear it enough. So blacks have a month, right? Black History Month.
I would like June to be Black History Month, Juneteenth, and get rid of Gay Pride Month.
No, but look, so you got Black History Month in February, right? And they talk about it, and companies pander to blacks. Mm-hmm. But if you think about that, or anything we may do for Jews, for Native Americans, for Muslims, for any other group, they're all surpassed by the LGBT month. Yes. There is more money, more signage, more flags, more sales, more promotion, more events, more menus. IKEA have LGBT decorations for love seats. I mean, it goes beyond anyone else. So one who's being fair and trying to understand this has to ask himself, why more focus on celebration and equality for LGBTQ than any other group in society? Because so why do you think that is?
They don't care about families. They do not care about families. The breakdown of family is one of the greatest tragedies in American history. In the 21st, early 21st century, and the last half of the 20th century, the breakdown of marriages between men and women, and we are promoting something. Families. The government came about as a result of family. Without family, there's no government in the traditional sense. Why are we trying to put a group that cannot produce on the same platform as a group that are producers?
Well, you make an interesting point there. Now, some people might hear that and say there's anti-gay rhetoric there.
Mm-hmm.
But I hear it and say it goes to this whole push now of equity over equality, but it's a farce because what I wrote about in my book that you so kindly held up there is that they don't want equality. They don't care how to get it. And so a lot of what they're pushing is negative equality, right? So instead of raising people up from oppression, they're willing to say, well, blacks, you make an average of $5 an hour. So instead of giving the blacks a raise, let's knock everybody down to $5 an hour, right? So they don't say that directly, but that's the movement and the direction they move in. So it's similar to this thing. You got to celebrate gays in June. We could have that separate argument. Claston says no. I'm like, all right, I got another question. Where's the month where you celebrate family then? I would actually trade off giving you an LGBT month if you gave us the month of August where it's all, I don't talk about it. I'm not saying LGBT to heterosexual. I mean pro-family month.
Yes. Yes.
Where there's sales, where there's discount, 10% discounts for all families to come in, where they're promoting the family, where they're saying, what are we doing about the family? Where they're saying, what has the family accomplished over the year, right? They talk about in those months, Black History Month, what have blacks accomplished for LGBT? Look at this gay pioneer who was the first to do X. I want you to talk about families, right?
Yes.
Where's that month? But they'll never do that because they'd rather tear down than to build up.
And that's the goal. The goal is to, and I've always said this, and then gays like blacks are being used for a certain agenda. And I think sooner or later they will recognize this. I think some of them are recognizing it. This is an agenda, and the agenda is for those who are in power to continue to maintain and keep power. And it doesn't matter how they tribalize us. So the fact is, I would like to see every month as a family month, as an American month, because America is about elevating the family. The American founders captured something that was never captured before. So the reality is, what is the purpose of elevating gay marriage above heterosexual marriages? Why? What is the purpose? Because again, we cannot continue to produce, we cannot continue to grow without traditional family values. We cannot. And, I can even be more cynical and go to the capitalistic system that we have. They said the impetus behind capitalism, as Marx says, is the family. So the family is the strength of capitalism. And people miss that message because so often they are focused on other things that they should not be focusing on. What is the purpose of promoting gay marriage? The fact is, that's what you like it. That's your problem.
Right.
Why?
That's my thing. Liking something is totally different from promoting it. Totally different. It's like I said to when I was talking to Michael Knowles about that thing. I said the free speech piece. I said free to protect, like as a conservative, you want to be consistent. So you say, do you want to protect gays from discrimination? I say 100%. Do you think it's bad that somebody's punching a guy in the face because he's gay? 100%. Do you look? Then it goes in states. Do you think they should be able to shut down the street and have a parade and go down the street or whatever? Okay, well, you're getting closer. But then I say, even if you say yes to that normative person who's being fair, at what point does it become, because we must admit, I'm not saying all of them do it, but it's evolved to this. It does it in every city that they have a parade. What point does protecting them go to somewhat celebrating them to full-on celebration where companies are doing this to the raucous parties where people are, disrobing themselves and exposing themselves and people just chuckling, saying, that's cool. That's the wonderful way the pride parade goes. Why? Right? It doesn't make sense. So at some point you need to draw the line between protections and promotion.
Well, true conservatism respect boundaries. It respects the laws of logic, the laws of biology, laws of physics. It respects. You have to have a healthy respect for the laws of science or whatever it is, and the law that has been we recognize as self-evident. Whether it's gravity, you can decide that you can fly. You can go on one of those tall buildings in New York and believe that you can.
Well, don't jump.
Don't do it. So the thing is, like you said, where does it stop? Do you have a right because someone is gay to attack them? No, you don't. And I would be the first one to protect them and defend them. Do you have a right to ridicule them? No, you don't really have a right to do that either. I will defend them. They want to wear a dress and behave like they're female. That's their problem. Where do I draw the line is when you're trying to say, put it on equal footing with heterosexual, or you're saying that this is a normal behavior.
Coming up, more with Claston Bernard, Christian conservative and author of Outcast. You're listening to The Charles Love Show on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, more of The Charles Love Show on AM 560, The Answer, with your host, Charles Love.
Welcome back. I am continuing my conversation with Claston Bernard, immigrant, entrepreneur, and author of Outcast. Here we switch gears a bit, and I ask him to tell me what his opinion is as to why we're in the mess we are in culturally. And he talks about a specific problem or a specific thing he feels that we are lacking. Let's shift to how we got here and what you think the problem is. You have a pretty clear idea in your mind as to what the problem is. Tell us what that is.
People can say a lot about the founders, but most of the founders were Bible believers. They read the Bible. They understood the Bible. Even the deists, they understood that there was a God. There is a cause outside this universe that created. Some of the deists didn't believe that God interfered in the activities of man. But then there are others like, what's his name, George Mason and people like that, that were, they strongly believed in their Christian faith and other people like that. And the thing is, the founders understood the position and the place of God, the creator that gave us unalienable rights. And we are moving away from that, and we're trying to answer society problem with intellectualism, which is what 1789 French Revolution was about. It always leads to nihilistic behavior, nihilism, chaos, destruction, and a whole total, just overall destruction of the human psyche. It kills the human spirit. So in order for us to have a society that respects laws, respect others, and I'm not talking just man-made laws, but nature's laws, it has to be based on God. And the moment we move away from God is why we are where we are. We could not have had the American Revolution without God. It was the preaching in the pulpit that was able to stoke the passion of man to say we have to stand up against this tyranny, the British government. It was also the fabric of the abolitionists, whether it was Wilberforce or all those other, Frederick Douglass and all the other people. It was the Christian religion that led to, or even John Brown, when John Brown was a hardcore Christian. It was that belief, Samuel P. Chase, it was a Christian belief that had them pushing. First, they got the Republican Party formed, and it was part of the impetus behind the Civil War. It was a driving force behind the Civil Rights Movement. MLK Jr. understood that. Most of the people understood that. So we didn't get to this place without having God as a solid foundation of our country. We didn't get those evil, oppressive systems to come down without God. But today we are trying to make intellectual arguments away from God because men no longer wants to restrain their passions.
What do you say to those who say, you keep saying that religion and the Christian values are the reasons why all these good things happen, but look at all the problems in the world that Christianity and religion cause?
Well, you know what? People who make abuses in the name of Christianity, it doesn't mean that they're Christians. That would be my response to them. That's not what Christianity is about.
Can a person be non-religious and be a murderer or a thief? Yes. And can a Christian be a murderer and a thief? The answer is yes.
Yes.
But that's the wrong question. The actual question should be, can you create a society built on fairness throughout and have it sustained without God? Now, they would say, probably if you do it right, I would say you can't do it. And I was going to ask you your thoughts, and then I came upon this article that I sent you. I want to get your thoughts on it. It's basically people who are at some degree of atheism, because they say it depends on whether you're a militant atheist or not, saying that though I can't make that leap to believe in God, I must admit that there's some things that only religion can give us. Talk about that.
And I go to something I read a long time ago, where there are atheists in Africa who said the Christian religion is the only thing that can save Africa. I was atheist saying that. So, it's something they have been seeing, because the morals, the Christian morals, and again, even back to the point, you don't judge a religion or anything based on the abuses. You judge it on the substance of its claim. And the Christian religion claims can be verified in a number of different ways. If you want to talk about the historical sense, if you want to talk about the scientific sense, there's a God. If there's a God, then there's miracles. Because only someone who could actually create, and I'm getting back to your point, who could actually create the universe could come in and in fact, create the universe. It's a miracle in itself, because it is so fine-tuned. There's, you could not go even an inch over without, destruction. It is intelligence behind the universe. So to get to where we are, you have to have some kind of divine intelligence to create what we're seeing today and what we're living. So the morality of Christianity hinges on God, the creator, and the values that we espouse, the equality that we're asking for. I wish I was still as strong and fast as I was when I was 25, but I'm no longer that, but I'm still a human. I'm still capable of doing things. Are we all equal? What is the system that what system are you trying to elevate? Because I have different needs. You have different needs. So we will have different focus. So we'll have different outcomes. We have different beliefs. If you believe it's okay to eat humans, and I don't believe that it's okay to eat humans, then who decides who is right or who is wrong?
Coming up, more with Claston Bernard, Christian conservative, entrepreneur, two-time Olympian, and author of Outcast. You're listening to The Charles Love Show on AM 560, The Answer.
The Charles Love Show continues on AM 560, The Answer. Here's Charles Love.
Welcome back. I am continuing my conversation with Claston Bernard, Christian conservative, entrepreneur, and author of Outcast. Here, we talk further about his belief that we are lacking religion, and while I agree with him on some parts, I challenge him a bit on how we can meet that challenge when the country is growing less and less religious. And we cite an article where atheists even say that people need to go to church. So if I'm talking to an atheist or someone who's like, well, I don't believe there's a God, so now what? I don't try to say what will or wouldn't be. I just simply ask them if we get to decide, especially today with everybody's idea of racism, equality, woman, everything is subjective. It's whatever you say. You could be, you saw the guy who's a trans Korean.
Yes.
So if we could all just on a whim decide what we want to be and everyone else has to accept it. I always ask this question, and the smarter they get, the longer the words are, but they all come up with a varying version of I don't know. Without a God, who says that it's wrong to murder? They're like, well, everybody said, what do you mean everybody? Not everybody. Murderers don't say it's not because they're murderers. Well, we just know. How do we just know? And then they say, well, then they want to tell me what John Locke and what Aristotle, what this, I don't care what they said. I want you to tell me today why I can't murder you. Because you don't want me to? That has nothing to do with me. I want to murder you. Talk me out of it. You can't say because it's morally wrong. I'll say, who's moral? We used to believe survival of the fittest. You can't say, well, you wouldn't want me to murder you. Now, that's a stronger argument. But I'll just say, but if I get to you first, you won't be murdering me because you'll be dead. So unless there is some higher order, let's not call it God. Let's call it what are those atheist people who make fun of God? What are they? The Pastafarians, right? They just make it right. Remember, they made up the term. So they just made up some religion where they worship pasta or something. They think they're being funny to Christians. Say, okay, give me your religion. So who in that religion tells me I can't murder? Because without a God, there is no reason. So it's like, how can you define anything? You're not going to evolve to where it's okay to murder or evolve to where no one's murdered because human nature is flawed. But we know it's wrong because there's, as you call them, natural laws. So that's what happens. So like in today's society, you would have nothing. Everything's subjective. You would have no laws. People talk about fighting for fairness and equal pay, but no one can tell you what the equal pay is. I mean, I have examples of this. Arguing against me is hard for you to come up with examples. I have examples. So forget about murder. That's too hard. What is the right pay? I don't think there should be a minimum wage. You think there should be. What is it? A livable one? Well, where do I live? Do I live in Wyoming or do I live in Manhattan? What is the wage? Well, I don't know. How much should the rich get taxed? Fair share. What is the fair share? Mm-hmm. I don't know. So they can't even answer those questions, but they think they can tell me whether I can murder them or not. They'd be dead if it were up to me.
But that's the whole thing, because there's objective moral authorities. There's objective moral truth. Truth cannot be subjective, because then it's like it's a survival of the fittest. And again, this is where evolution falls on its head. When? How long? You know, we can always ask these questions, and it goes back. It's funny. We're talking about so much in politics or government, but where do they get their morals from? How do they determine the laws that we have? You know, who gets to choose what is right, what is wrong? Who gets to decide any of that? Because it comes down to it. And that's why, for me, I like to say we have to, even as conservative, remember that we have to keep God at the forefront of what we're doing. It's not about trying to create a theocracy. It's not about trying to create a system that will penalize people, because God, the term that I would use, if we deny God, he said there's a place for you when you die. You know, so that's not what I'm trying to propose in the government. I'm just saying there are morals and ethics that we have to uphold. And those moral and ethics are what is going to move us forward as a society. And those morals have to be based on an objective moral lawgiver. Otherwise, our laws become subjective. Otherwise, you cannot create an equal society. And the only system that has given us that equality is the Judeo-Christian religion.
So what do? Preaching to the choir won't help. So how do we get people to understand any of the things that we're trying to point out? Either that there must be an objective truth, which isn't a religious thing, or the just as true but harder to convince fact that we need religion and we need God in order to succeed, in order to reach the higher plane that people are trying to get. How do we do that?
Well, our founders did it. Our founders understood all the...
Our founders didn't have Twitter. And didn't have what do you call rhinos, and they didn't have parties, and they did even though they were founded like 8 years later, but they didn't have a lot of the stuff. I mean, we have a lot of great advances that they didn't have that are great, but we have some serious problems. They didn't have the fake news. They didn't have Fox and what do you call it? Cable 24-hour cable news stations. So it's a little. I mean, I think. For all the world being different and advanced, I think it's a lot harder now than it was for them. Wait, there was a higher percentage of people who were already innately religious than there are now? So you didn't have to convince them, right?
But it started somewhere. You
got to give me more hope than that. That's what I am. Like, what do we do? And you tell me the founders? You basically just tell me we're screwed and there's nothing we can do. Come on, what do we do?
No, it's just like the Christian religion. If you want to be a Christian, you have to believe what the Bible says. So you have to go back to it. Doesn't matter that we're 2,000 years away from Christ. We have to go back to what we know.
Right, but the society is different. So if it was 1789 with all the slavery and all the evil and no sewers, but still, I didn't have to, if I'm Thomas Paine, I didn't have to convince you to read the Bible or there was a God, because you probably already believed it. Coming up, my final segment with Claston Bernard, entrepreneur, Christian conservative, and author of Outcast. You're listening to The Charles Love Show on AM 560, The Answer.
The Charles Love Show continues on AM 560, The Answer. Here's Charles Love.
Welcome back. I've reached the final segment with Claston Bernard, entrepreneur, immigrant, two-time Olympian. We've been talking about sports, the culture, religion, and other things. And here is the final segment of that interview. Now you got 30% of the population saying, I'm somewhat squishy, airy, spiritual, which has no defined meaning, or I'm atheist. Now that's a total different society. So how do you get your message out in that society?
Well, you have to keep being true to yourself, and you have to keep standing up. Again, a lot of those mindset, even the humanistic system that we're seeing was around that time. The socialistic aspect, they didn't have Marx then, but a lot of those tendencies were there. There were a lot of good writers, a lot of atheistic or agnostic, all those Enlightenment people were around. It was a time of great knowledge and enlightenment, as it says, enlightenment.
Enlightenment.
Right. So there were a lot of things that was around.
But they were counterculture like we are now. So yes. They were on the outs banging on the door and said, read my wonderful writing. I have a new way of thinking. Where now, not only do you have to act as if yours is a new way of thinking, but it's traditionalism. So it's the old way of thinking. So they're going to think, we don't want that old stuff. Get that old stuff out of here.
Well, we can either say, take it to the logical ending. Where has it gone? We can go to socialism or communism, as they say, has never been tried. The real communism. So let's stick it with socialism. Let's see what destruction it has led to. But look at what has led to redemption in America. Christian religion. MLK Jr. adhered to that. The Civil War, the American Revolution. Those are three great moments in our history. So we don't have to go back that very far. We can go back to MLK Jr., who stood on the Christian principles and also the founding doctrine and says, here is this promissory note. I am going to hold you to these promissory note that all men are created equal with certain unalienable rights endowed by God, the Creator. So he went back. And that's what we have to do. Yes, the society will say, you know what, this is our way of thinking. But then I will point to the atheists in Africa who are saying Africa needs a Christian religion.
Or now the atheists in America who are saying
and the atheists in America, yes, from that article is saying we need Christianity, not just religion. We need the Christian religion, because that has been the benchmark, the sustainer of Western civilization.
I think I need to leave them with with a paragraph from this article. The article says the turning tide of intellectual atheism, and it's talking about how some atheists are starting to see that religion still has a place and is important, written by an atheist. In it, he says that he was brought up essentially in a Calvinistic ethical framework, but with no God.
Yes.
Had its benefit, I was encouraged to think in a very critical way about religion and also about science. But I've come to see as a historian that you can't base a society on that. Indeed, atheism, particularly in its militant forms, is really a very dangerous metaphysical framework for a society. And he goes on to talk about that, how he flat out says, I think everybody should go to church.
Yes.
So in your words, I guess what you're saying, solve the problem with the Constitution in one hand and the Bible in the other.
Yes.
Well, you'd have to come back and we'll talk about something else. I always love talking to you. He is Claston Bernard. He's a former Olympian, candidate for Congress, active GOP member in Louisiana. Claston, thank you for joining me.
Charles, as always, man, look, I enjoy talking to you. It's sometimes so much going through your mind. You just, and there's very few people I'm able to have that conversation with. And you're one of them. And, I'm going to say this, listen to this guy. He is the future of America. Give him that platform. Give him that opportunity. He will not disappoint. Conservatives, I'm talking to you. Republicans, I'm talking to you. Democrats who are still conservative, I'm talking to you. And the left, if you want some logic, listen to this guy.
Well, that was certainly a very surprising and humbling ending to the segment. I really appreciate that. I hope you listen, and I'm glad he thinks so highly of me, and I appreciate that.